on behalf of the Jefferson County Farm Bureau, I'd like to welcome everyone to the County Supervisor Meet the Candidates Forum. Thank you all for attending or listening on the radio, and a special thank you for our candidates for participating. Before we begin, we have a few items to cover. Out of respect for the candidates and other voters, we would ask that everyone please silence your phones. This stage is for County Supervisor candidates, and we ask the audience to keep conversations and comments from being a distraction. Those not showing respect for the candidates or other voters will be asked to leave the forum. If you have a question for the candidates, we're only accepting them in writing. In the interest of time and to cover as many aspects of being a county supervisor, we will be combining like questions, removing that do not pertain to the job of a county supervisor, and those that we feel are one-sided or attacking any one particular candidate. At this time, I'd like to introduce our moderator for the evening, Joe Ledger.
Thank you, John. Before we begin, I would like to go over the process for tonight's program. Each candidate will be given 3 minutes for an opening statement. Following the introductions, each candidate will have the opportunity to answer questions that are submitted by the audience. We will only be accepting questions in writing, and we have the right to remove any questions we feel are attacking or directed toward one particular candidate. This is not a debate, but an opportunity for voters to learn the candidate's position on issues important to our voters. If you have a question, please put it in the box back there and we will pick it up. We will rotate who answers each question first. After questions have been asked, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to prepare closing remarks. Candidates will then be given 3 minutes for their closing. With that, we will begin tonight's program with Darren, since he is sitting closest to me. I decided that earlier today. Whoever sat in the chair closest to me was the one that started. So Darren, would you like to make an opening statement?
Hi, my name is Darren Hamilton. I think I'm going to have to sit back from this a little bit. My voice carries a lot. I'm a native of Iowa. I grew up in Vinton, Iowa. I went to high school there at Washington High School, graduated in 1979. I went to Hawkeye Community College, which was at that time Hawkeye Institute of Technology in Waterloo, Iowa, and received a diploma in architectural and construction drafting. After that, I went into the service. I was in the Navy Seabees, and I was an engineering aide there. I did 2 tours overseas, one in Rota, Spain, and one in Bermuda. The rest of the time I was stationed at Port Hueneme in California. When I got out of the service, I came back to Iowa, and I went to work for Kirkham Michael and Associates in Des Moines. I then moved to Phoenix, Arizona, and worked for Collar, Williams & White Engineering there, which is now Rick Engineering, a worldwide engineering firm. When I left Arizona, I came back to Iowa because I felt this is where I really needed to be. I really didn't want to live in a big city and didn't really like that all that much. So when I got back here, I got a job in Marion, Iowa, working for Anderson Consultants, a surveying firm. My father was a teacher at Hawkeye Tech at that time, and he brought home a job listing for Jefferson County Engineers Department in secondary roads. I was hired by Gary Bishop, who was the engineer at that time, and worked for the secondary road department for approximately 5 years. I then took a position with the Iowa Department of Transportation here in Fairfield in the District 5 office, and I've worked for the DOT now for a little over 25 years. I met my wife Tammy here. She and I were married in 1991. We have 2 children. Our oldest is our daughter Elizabeth. She is married and lives in Spencer, Iowa, where she is a teacher of advanced math at the high school. Our son is a sergeant in the U.S. Marine Corps, and he's stationed at 29 Palms in California, and he is looking to get out and return to Iowa this December after 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Mr. Reed?
So, hi, my name's Dick Reed. I think most of you probably already know me, but it's nice to see all the, I guess I'm going to say smiling faces out there. So, I was born right here in Fairfield, Iowa, and graduated from Fairfield High School, and Uncle Sam thought I was pretty important when I got out of Fairfield High School because I was number one. And so I joined the Navy. The Navy took me on several adventures. I made 3 Westpac cruises to Vietnam. They trained me as an airplane mechanic, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And so I think it was in '68, I married my wife, Mary. And we have 3 kids, and 5 grandkids. I see her putting her hand up back there. 5 grandkids. We stayed in San Diego area for 10 years. That's where I was stationed at in the Navy. I went to work for the airlines there. I had kind of a neat job. If anybody's ever watched the movie Top Gun, I was their first maintenance mechanic at Top Gun, which I thought was probably a job of my life, but it just happened it was a government job, and I didn't think it was going to last, so I went back to work for the airlines. So why in the world did Dick Reed ever come back to Fairfield, Iowa? Well, in the mid-'70s, there was an energy crisis, and the airlines were kind of shaky. My dad was a construction worker here in town and running his own business. We came back for our 10-year class reunion, and work was plentiful here. I started the business and never looked back. I ran my construction business until 2005. If you had a Reed-built home, you had something. Had a good reputation. There was people in the community that wanted me to get involved. I was involved from the community from day one. I've been on, I don't know, just about every board and committee you can possibly think of. Service agencies, all kinds of different elks, lions, you name it, I've done it. But so I ran for Board of Supervisors 16 years ago, and I've been a supervisor ever since. I think that I learn every day. I'm not done, and I'd like to take and serve you at least another 4 more years. I think I have learned a lot in the last 16 years, and I think I can put that experience to use and do a good job for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Matthew?
Yes, my name is Matthew Lindbergh-Work. I have been part of the Fairfield community since 1999. I was originally, as a young child, first in Wisconsin and then in Maryland. I grew up near the Washington, D.C. area, and so I got somewhat of a familiarity with both national politics and local politics. There's a lot of issues that surrounded the urbanization of the greater Baltimore-Washington metro area, the development of the airports, highways, railroad lines, the growth of the internet was something I got to watch. And even before coming to Fairfield and starting my degree at MUM, I would study local government as much as I could, attending hearings, going into the libraries and reading the research reports. So the whole issue of how a community makes its decisions has intrigued me. In 1999, I came and got involved in the environmental club on the MUM campus. It was at that time called the Organization for the New Earth, famous for putting on the EcoJam fashion shows, which would fundraise for the Free Tree Project. So I was very inspired by some of the people who were part of that student group, who are now part of the community, some of them in city government, some of them all over the world. And I've always thought that this is a community we can reinvest and invest in. There's a wonderful farming base, there's so many opportunities, and I have had the great fortune to be part of several jobs that have taken me to different parts of this community and seeing what awesome work we all have been doing here. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Dick, the first question will be to you as I alternate. Roads and bridges are always a concern. How would you prioritize infrastructure spending?
I guess I'd like to say by the bumps in the roads. We have about 850 miles of road in Jefferson County, and rounded off, there's about 100 miles of dirt, 100 miles of hard surface, and the rest are gravel. Gravel roads are probably one of the main things that a board of supervisors is going to get involved with, is trying to figure out how to maintain them for the proper dollars. Funding always seems to be short. If you maybe read tonight's newspaper, we're talking about there's 3 roads out there that we would like to take and resurface. There's more than 3 roads that we'd like to resurface, but we don't have enough money. So we're talking about doing a bond issue. Jefferson County notoriously is a pay-as-you-go county, and so it's a pretty big step to take and bond and ask. But one thing about a bond is every taxpayer in Jefferson County pays on that bond. I don't think a lot of people realize that. So we try to pick out the worst and take care of that, along with trying to do some improvements as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Matthew?
Yes, prioritizing infrastructure spending. I saw a hand, but unfortunately we're not taking questions, I think, yeah, except written questions. But good to see you all. There's definitely a place for everyone in this county. So there's the farm to market roads. Most of them are gravel, with the 100 miles that Supervisor Reed mentioned that are hard surface. And that is the lifeblood of the farm economy here and gives people the ability to live and travel throughout this county. It's pretty much what county government does, is make sure the roads are working. And I know that I can draw on a huge amount of resources already in this community to just keep doing a good job and work with the other supervisors to make sure that it is at the best cost for all of us who are taxpayers.
Thank you, Matthew. Darren?
In the last 18 years, I've worked in the design office at the district office here in Fairfield. As part of that, I have done plans that are used for construction of roadways in the area. I've dealt a lot with the funding that comes from the state through, or also the federal government through the state, in order to do the road projects of the primary system, the primary road system here in this state. When I was with the secondary road department here in the county, I got to see firsthand as how the maintenance department works and how good the maintenance people really are here in the county. I've been impressed with the patching that they've been able to do themselves on the roadway, which also saves county residents quite a little bit of money when it comes to that. They've done some recent patching out on Pleasant Plain Road. It's made it tremendously smoother than what it was. The funding itself comes from several different entities. The biggest pot is usually from the road use tax fund, which is brought by the gasoline tax. As far as budgeting for the county, I think that bonding would be a good idea to take care of the 3 roads that are mentioned in the newspaper, and I think that that would be something that the county should move ahead with.
Thank you, Darren. Next question. Matthew will start. Tax increment financing, TIF, is heavily used across Iowa. Should Jefferson County utilize TIF differently than it is today?
Well, a lot of good projects have been made possible through the TIF districts. There's at least 4 or 5 in the city limits of Fairfield alone. I don't recall or remember if Jefferson County has any TIF districts. I just know it's an alternative to either general revenue spending or bond spending. And there are some catches. So obviously, good supervision, proper public hearings, making sure that the intent of the TIF district is used so that we're not reaching the debt limit, because the local governments do essentially co-sign on those districts.
Thank you. Darren?
The city of Fairfield has used TIF districting here. I've been a part of that over the last 10, 12 years. We have found that there are different ways to use it. We try to use it more targeted to particular areas here in the community. One of the most recent is the Lincoln Park addition, which is down by the bank and across from the hospital on the south side of town. Infrastructure that's going in out there is being paid for through TIF dollars, which are then rebated back to the people that actually constructed the roadway, and so that we can expand in that area. As the properties are sold, the taxes are regenerated and brought back through the TIF district. As far as the county is concerned, there are locations that you could use TIF districting, but you need to be able to use that in conjunction with some bigger development. I don't see where a residential development or something like that would be beneficial to the county to have it as a TIF district. So I think we would have to look at where we would target that fund.
Thank you. Dick?
Yeah, TIF is a tax increment financing, is a really good tool if you can find a place to use it that's appropriate. You know, when we did Heartland Co-op come to town, we talked about TIFing the road out there, and by the time we saw the hoops that we were going to have to jump through in order to do that TIF, it was better not to do the TIF. So under the right circumstances, a TIF would be a very good thing. Something, a large manufacturing sector coming to rural Jefferson County, maybe. But so it would be something you would look at as a tool. There's a lot of legalities that come along with it. There's a lot of extra expenses that you have to have a strategic plan up to date. So there's a lot of things that you have to do if you're going to use a TIF. So I think but anytime you do any project, you got to look at all the aspects. You just can't say, well, gee, I know this is the way to do it. You have to look and review all the different aspects in order to make sure you go in the right avenue.
Thank you, Dick. Matthew?
I think I got back.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
He started it.
I told you to correct me. So, we're going to go back to Darren here. Has the Dakota Access Pipeline been a positive for the county?
That's a very tough question. We do get revenue from the Dakota pipeline here in the county, and I know that there was a lot of contention when it came through, and a lot of people arguing that bringing an oil pipeline through a farming area is detrimental to the location that it goes through. dealing with easements that go along with it and access for the company to be able to go out and repair lines is a concern of people that actually use the easement after the pipeline is in. I don't believe farmers are restricted from being able to plant ground on top of that, but if something does happen, then they have already been pre-compensated for their losses by granting that easement to the company. I know that there was a lot of concern with an oil spill from that pipeline that went on just recently up in South Dakota, and that people here in the county, some people in the county here have felt that it was not a good thing for the county, but I believe that we can live with it just as we have lived with natural gas pipelines that have run through this county for years.
Thank you. Dick?
So actually, we haven't seen any money from Dakota Pipeline yet, or the county hasn't seen any money. We're ready to spend it as soon as we get it. Hopefully it's going to be about $500,000 a year, but we haven't even seen a good calculation yet on it. As far as the pipeline going through the county, everything really went pretty smooth for something that large of an venture going through. Worked with our engineer's office. They had good routing. They've just come back this spring and redid a few spots that had settled, and that worked out fine. So I really don't have a whole lot more to say about it other than we're looking forward to the money because it's going to help us on the roads.
Thank you, Dick. Matthew?
Yes. Want to take an opportunity, is my mic on? Yeah, I think it is.
Yes.
Want to take an opportunity to talk about property rights. And a lot of the oil that is flowing through the Dakota Access Pipeline is sold by either private landowners or public entities or tribal entities, mostly in North Dakota. And then it flows through the state of Iowa to Indiana to then be shipped to the Chicago Great Lakes area or south to the Gulf. The party that I'm a member of is the Libertarian Party, and there's, as with any different political group, wild debate about how free enterprise works in this country, how it could work in this country, what the roles of different stakeholders are. I have some family experience as well with different people, aunts, uncles, cousins who've had, well, not aunts, but uncles, cousins, others who've had mineral rights in Oklahoma. And it's a choice. Do we sell to the oil company now, or do we reserve the ability to sell higher later? And if you go to the Libertarian Party of Iowa website, you'll see a very interesting platform statement.
Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah.
Next question, Dick will start. What is your vision for future projects that the Jefferson County Supervisors could initiate and carry out for the good of their constituents?
I think that, it's been a really hot topic here, and that's our environment. Our courthouse has been getting filled, and our office has been filled with people talking about water quality, air quality, use of our roads. And I think if there's anything in the future that could be done with the Board of Supervisors is that work with the state to get some better rules and regulations to help control the environment. There is a sector of the community that thinks it's the Board of Supervisors maybe aren't even doing their job because they're wanting to do some things that we physically can't do. So it's actually the state project, and I think Board of Supervisors to work better with the state and state legislators to get a new future for all of Iowa.
Thank you, Dick. Matthew?
Yes. The biggest single thing in this county that affects all of us is the state of jobs, the state of education, the ability of people here to see this as a community to retire to raise kids in, to invest in businesses in. This is the business climate, and it's also the environmental climate. We have been discovering over and over again over the past few decades how those communities in the United States that have the best attention on both the regulatory aspect for how easy it is to establish new businesses or grow new businesses, as well as the environmental aspect of what is the quality of life once you go home. Are you in a safe environment? Are your kids happy? And the biggest single thing we as a county could do together is really listen. And to a degree, this is the job of the county supervisors in order to administer the public funds in a way that supports the goal and goals of the whole community. How this can happen, I think there are ways, and all of us have been finding ways, and we'll keep finding ways.
Thank you. Darren?
I kind of have a reputation of someone that really has worked towards clean water quality here in the community of Fairfield. When I first got onto the council, I was appointed to the Utilities Committee, and I was baptized firsthand in that we were polluting our own environment from the city standpoint from sanitary sewer overflows. And so I worked pretty hard on trying to change that. But that was something that was changed one small step at a time. Water quality issues here in Jefferson County have been improved as of late through funding from the state for the different watershed projects that were available around. And I know that several farmers here in this room and listening on the radio took the opportunity to be able to do that with their ground and be able to improve how they check what is running off into the streams that are near their properties. I find that there's a little disconnect between our larger farmers and the smaller farmers who they rent ground from, that they can't seem to be able to work that into what they need to do with their own ground. I think there could be some education done in that way, and we can improve our watersheds through that effort.
Thank you, Darren. Next question. Matthew will start. If the county has extra revenue available, do you favor returning the money to taxpayers through lower property tax levies or finding additional ways to spend it?
Well, the conservative way of doing things is to always go by half. So return half to the taxpayers, take the other half, invest it in whatever would create the best impact. There's probably a few places in this county that are somewhat underfunded. For example, the roads. There's always a need because there's 800 miles of roads. And any investment in capital improvements such as bridges, improvements to bike trails, things like that will be here longer than the money ever was or would be.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Darren?
Surpluses in budgets are fairly rare, as I've found over the years in city government. I'm sure it's fairly rare on the county level as well. As far as returning it directly back to the taxpayers, you have to think of terms of what you have done in years past and what you are planning to do into the future with your infrastructure, and also with trying to help entice businesses to the community here, as well as to other communities around us. There are small towns here in Jefferson County that could benefit from being able to have something brought to the community to help them grow. The idea of returning it directly back to the taxpayer with a reduction in property tax sounds like a really good thing for you to enjoy and get back, but it really means that something else is going to need to be cut at a future date in order to be able to balance that budget back out when it really comes time and necessary to do something. Thank you.
Thank you. Dick?
Well, certainly I'd give it back to the taxpayers. Well, maybe. That's a pretty good concept. So we have the local option sales tax. And so we have 20% of that for roads and culverts and bridges. 80% of it goes back to the taxpayer. So that's kind of, we could spend all that money other than we put it on the ballot and they choose how it's going to be spent. Honestly, I can't hardly see, I'd like to know where that revenue is going to come from to have the extra money, and if it would be a constant thing. If it was going to be a constant thing, sure, we'd give it back to the taxpayer. But if it's just a one-time thing, we've got so many projects out there that we're always scratching our head trying to figure out where do we come up with the next penny. At the end of every budget year, I always tell the taxing bodies or the department heads, take and turn back your additional money so we can have a good year-end budget fund balance. Just don't go out and buy a bunch of light bulbs. Just don't go spend it because you have it. Please turn it back to us because it's the taxpayers' money, and that's important.
Thank you. Let's see here. The next question. This one is going to go to Darren first. What is your opinion of county zoning?
When I first moved to Jefferson County in 1988, Gary Bishop was the engineer, and at that time, Gary was in the process of trying to work through what county zoning would be. There was a document that he had created on how it would work and what would take place if it was implemented here in the county, and I believe a lot of that information is still around and available to us yet today. There are advantages and disadvantages to zoning, and one of the advantages is that you as a property owner are able to determine what can happen and can't happen in your particular area. There seems to be an awful lot of empty subdivisions here in the county. There are some that have just one or two houses in them. We could look at how those are structured and where the zoning could work around those particular entities. And to me, if there is a driving force to maybe relook at that, I would take it up and I would rethink the whole process and see if we couldn't apply it into our terms of use today.
Thank you. Dick?
I remember the days when they were talking about zoning in Jefferson County, and honestly, at the time, there was an entity that did not want zoning. Zoning ended up being a real four-letter word. There was actually some threats on some supervisors' lives at the time. I would not be afraid of zoning. I think most of the time we get along pretty good without it. But boy, every now and again, there's a time when if we had zoning, that'd be easier. So it's kind of a catch-22. If it got brought up again, we'd definitely look at it and see how it would take and work in today's world. The world changes pretty quick, and so you have to be kind of flexible and change along with it. You just can't say, well, because 20 years ago, those guys were going to get shot because they were going to take up zoning. But I'd look at it again. Washington County voted zoning in, and 3 new supervisors got run on election of no zoning. And so as soon as they got elected, Washington County doesn't have zoning now. But that doesn't make it right or wrong. I think we'd have to look at it.
Thank you. Matthew.
I'd like to ask a question to the audience. If you could either stand up or raise your hand. If you believe that this county that we live in is... Okay. All right. So it comes down to this. Is the county going to grow, and would this be in your favor as a citizen of the county? Would it be in your favor as a community member who is attending church, sending your kids to school, going to your clubs? Would it be in your benefit for this county to grow? And then that's question number one. Question number two, is zoning going to help the county as a whole being able to grow, or will it hurt the county as a whole being able to grow? And then that's just objective numbers. Maybe how it is answered, who knows? Who knows how that would be answered? And then the third question is, will zoning increase quality of life or not? We have plenty of stories of people living in California and then leaving California to come to Iowa, where they can live in peace with their neighbors. And sometimes that peace is because there is no zoning. Sometimes zoning makes peace, just because of the statement of Robert Frost, good fence makes good neighbors.
Thank you, Matthew. Next question will be directed to Dick. How can the county government significantly reduce its use of fossil fuels, and will you commit to doing this? It's a question from the audience.
That's okay. No, I think it's a good question. I suppose we would take and look at all of our vehicles, our road maintainers, see if there was a better way that we could afford to take and use a different type of method to power them. Solar energy, wind energy, I think all of those things you have to take a look at and see if they're truly a usable situation. We've talked about solar out at the county engineer's office and the county sheds. It ended up being, if you were a private individual and doing solar, you could get a grant. If you were a county and doing some solar, there was no grant money there. So the cost of it got pretty prohibitive. In other words, didn't think we could afford it at the time, but it doesn't mean we won't look at it again.
Thank you. Matthew?
Yes. The biggest role of reducing the use of fossil fuels, the biggest way that this can be accomplished is through efficiency. There's many possible ways that probably have been explored. The engineers in the county government are tapped into different avenues that they have. There's fleet maintenance contracts. There's the ability to do dispatching based on GIS systems, just like FedEx or UPS might. To a large degree, efficiency is an ongoing process. The question here is, can we go beyond efficiency to go to net zero? And absolutely, yes, we can. We were talking about the oil pipeline earlier, and people who either sell oil from their family's land or have had to leave it and turn it over to extraction. Eventually, that oil will run out. And so that's an existential question of, do we want to go all the way back to the horse and buggy era, or do we want to go ahead into the future and adopt those renewable technologies when we can, where we can? We'll also get, as we find ways to invest, we'll get immediate emergency management benefits, because a sustainable grid is one that doesn't run out.
Darren?
The secondary road department, I'm not sure if they are using it at this time or not, but biodiesel is a very good alternative to regular pump diesel that is used. I don't know the availability of it here in the county or the capability of the county to be able to have it for use here at this time. The city had went through a couple of changes with solar energy, particularly on the library. We were lucky enough to get a grant from Alliant Utility in order to do that at the library, but we have since added solar to it that was at the expense of the city. And we found that the savings that were reached by the library and using that solar at the library was able to allow the library board to determine they could afford to put in extra solar units on the roof. There are other places in the city that we're starting to look at that kind of thing. I do believe that if we were to put it on some of our larger structures, especially at the secondary road department for the buildings there, it would be a good use of taxpayer funds in order to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I lost my place. All three of you answered that one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm all messed up here. Okay, next one is right here. This one will go to Matthew first. County budgeting decisions can result in property tax increases. How would you protect property taxpayers?
The biggest issue that I have heard from people is how they consider the viability of living in this community. And the people who have farms, obviously they've made a huge investment, don't want to go anywhere soon. The people who have children in school, similar, a child is a huge investment of love, among other things. And to feel the economic pressure of exercising choice. We all have a choice. We could live in Jefferson County or we could live somewhere else. There's a cost to live here, there's a cost to live somewhere else. And how would I protect the taxpayers? Well, any decision that's made is not what's convenient for me. It's not even what's convenient for you. It's what will make this county strong. And those factors of the balance of the tipping point of being competitive with other places and high quality of life here, both of those are important.
Thank you. Darren?
Protecting the property tax base. The county is always faced with problems that they have to solve when it comes to repairs, replacements, ongoing maintenance. To say that a supervisor can always promise that property taxes will stay where they are or be lower, I believe is really a fantasy for that council or the supervisor, because you don't know from year to year what your biggest concern will be coming up for that next budget cycle. You have to be able to start working on the budget in late December, early January, so that it can be certified in March with the state of Iowa. And then there are times where it's adjusted back to counties and cities from the state, and adjustments need to be made in April to that budget. So to try and protect the property tax owners, I think, is a difficult thing to do as a supervisor. We need to be mindful of what needs to be done and how it's going to be paid for.
Thank you. Dick?
Actually, we get pretty good at it. I don't think everybody really understands it, but every single year we start working on the budget before the first of the year, and we try to go through each line item. You know, the boards of supervisors, we sit on some, between the three of we sit on some 42 boards and committees. we really have to look hard at each one of those boards and committees. Each one of those wants a little piece of the pie. And we have to determine, is that a valid thing for the taxpayers of Jefferson County to pay for? I see every now and again people I think they feel entitled. Oh, I sit on this board, I'm going to fund this board. Really have to look hard at that, because every now and again that board's getting stagnant and it's really not doing its job. So then you have to take and pull back. But so in order to protect the taxpayer, you have to learn how to say no, and you have to make sure what you're spending money on is correct.
Thank you. The next question, Darren will answer first. How should the county handle and fund EMS services?
I don't know as to whether I can really answer that question right now. I was in a closed session of the city council last evening concerning that very issue, and there are some creative ideas that are going to come forward here in the next few weeks or even sooner as far as what would happen with that. So I think I'm going to reserve an answer for a later date so that I can better inform you as to what that plan is going to be.
Thank you. Dick?
Well, it's like Darren said, it didn't work right now, and nobody's going to know. We don't even know for a month or so yet. Might happen quicker, may happen later. But the fact is, I moved back to Fairfield in 1976, and we've always had an ambulance contract, and it's always been a bucket of worms somewhere along the way. It's for the taxpayers, the safety of the taxpayers and your loved ones, to be able to call an ambulance and get it to your house and get you for care. And if we have to take it over and run it ourselves, I think that's what needs to be done. Employees need to be treated like employees. If we had a good base and they could look at some retirement, maybe they could look at some regular work hours, it all needs to be taken care of. We have boards and committees that are working on it, so just watch the paper.
Thank you. Matthew?
Yes. This is a case where there's a balance of equity between the city and the small villages and cities around Fairfield. There's the city of Fairfield, Packwood, Libertyville, Lockridge, Pleasant Plain. One ambulance is on duty any given point in a 24-hour cycle is starting to push up against our challenges of aging population, population growth, the goal of having new people. There's all sorts of things that come into play. There has been an ambulance contract. By and large, it's worked. People have gone to the hospital, except when there's one ambulance out and there's another call. That's a very tricky situation, very tricky. I know that this is where spending money becomes almost a civic responsibility. We have to support our first responders to have the tools to do what they can to keep people safe, get them care, all of that. How to fund it, there's a lot of expertise, and time will tell.
Thank you. The next question will go to Dick first. Should there be stronger county enforcement of trespassing laws?
Well, I guess I'd kind of like to have an example, but I don't know that trespassing is against the law. So I honestly think there's probably a law there. I don't know who wrote it or why they wrote that question. So I don't, not that I know of. That's my answer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Matthew?
Yes, if I remember right, the Iowa state government recently updated the rules so that a landowner can mark their property as no trespassing, not even having to post no trespassing signs, but just paint a particular color of paint. I think it's purple paint, but you'd have to double check. Once property is posted, it's off limits, and that's understood that it's the same as if it was someone's backyard. If it's not posted, the precedents of English common law apply. Some property that's not posted is in fact abandoned. And so there's lots of unknowns there. It could be that a neighbor needs to access the property and the owner is nowhere to be found. So whether the county needs to enforce, probably it would have to wait. Any enforcement is an expense, extra time that law enforcement has to spend. So it would have to be based on the need.
Thank you. Darren?
Trespassing, like other ordinances or laws here in the county, have to be reported by the actual property owner. They should have evidence of what has happened. If it's vandalism or something that's going on the property, you as a property owner would be best served by trying to help yourself out, getting a trail camera or something, setting it up so that you can catch these people in the act of trespassing on your property. Once you've done that, you can hand that information over to the sheriff's department. They can start doing their due diligence of trying to find who this person is and taking care of the problem that way. I think there's trespassing that happens here in the city just by accident in many cases where people believe that they have a little bit farther on their property that they want to go or that they want to be on, and they haven't taken the time to actually talk to their neighbor as far as what's going on with this particular area. And so there can be misunderstandings that could be worked out between neighbors when it comes to that. But I do believe that trespassing is being enforced by county officials at this time, and I don't see a need for any increased activity in this area.
Thank you. The next question, Matthew will start. What experience do you have that makes you the strongest candidate for Jefferson County Supervisor?
I have been able to work with people in this community in ways that before I came along, people thought would have been very difficult. And some of those examples I could give are recent, some of them are farther back in the 18 years I've been here. And most of the time I've worked with people, it's been either as the head of a committee or as a secretary of a committee or in some way responsible for planning an event, putting on a public awareness campaign, or setting up the funding mechanism and public designs so that we could all have a new civic improvement. Whether some of the things I've been involved in just a little bit have been big, like the trail project to have the Jefferson County trail system. I know that most of the time I've had to listen to what people are willing to do and do my best to support them and work with them. And I've had the great joy of seeing a lot of things succeed.
Darren, thank you.
Over the 16 years that I've been on the city council here in Fairfield, I've learned a lot of things. One of the biggest things that you learn right away is that you cannot please everyone, but you can still listen. You can still show empathy. You can still show concern, you can still work with a person and try to work through a problem for solutions that will be best for not only that person, but their neighbors and the community as a whole. I believe that I have done my part as far as civic duty to the community and showing that I'm willing to be that person that listens. I want to extend what I've learned at the city to the county level, and I believe that my qualifications are what are needed in order to handle this job. Thank you.
Dick?
What makes me qualified to be a Jefferson County Supervisor? I started off many years ago. I served on a board of review for 18 years, listened to people take and come in and discuss their property taxes, their assess evaluations. I've been on planning and zoning. I was on planning and zoning for 12 years. I was a city councilman for 3 years. This is my 16th year as being a board of supervisor. I sit on 15 boards and committees. I'm the chairman of half of those boards and committees, and some of them are multi-million-dollar boards and committees. I've been on the 3-county landfill for ever since I've been on city council, so that's 19 years, and we got a $7.6 million budget. It's one of the best run best county landfills in Iowa. So I think there's some history of being able to take and work for the taxpayer.
Thank you, Dick. Next question will be directed to Darren first. Is it appropriate to fund an infrastructure project utilizing bonding instead of a pay-as-you-go approach?
There are two ways to look at that. If you pay as you go, sometimes you fall behind in what you are working to achieve. Bonding can fill that gap. Bonding is, the county has the capacity to be able to bond to a certain level, which should be set at a maximum point so that you don't go over, say, 50% of your bonding level or capacity that you can have. As bonds get paid off, some are over a 40-year time period, they reduce how much needs to be paid into them. You can pay bonds off faster than the 40-year time limit that you've actually borrowed your money for. And it's a good use to try to catch up on things that you have let go over the years. I don't advocate bonding for more than 50% of the bonding capacity of the county at any given time. I think that's kind of detrimental to you. I think that would increase your property taxes if we were to do that. So we need to be mindful that either if you are a pay-as-you-go, you need to keep up with what you have, or you will need to be bonding.
Thank you. Dick?
Now, pay-as-you-go is a really neat way if you can handle it, but it comes to a point where you're falling behind, so then you have to look at bonding. Jefferson County has really been conservative. Bonding is a 4-letter word for us, and so we only use it when we think we have to. We don't even have, never even come close of going to our limit. I hate to quote numbers, but I think like 58 million is our limit, and we've got like 15, we want to bond, if we bond for this aid, it'll be about 15 million. So but still, we look at what it's going to cost you, your property taxes, when we bond. And we figure out we look at your $100,000 home. What's that going to cost that homeowner of $100,000? What's it going to cost you a month if we bond for X number of dollars? And we're not trying to make it so you can't go to the store and get that bag of groceries. So we look at it really hard. Is it a necessity? And that's what we do.
Thank you. Matthew?
Yes. So bonding, right now, as Supervisor Reed mentioned, there's maybe a dozen million in bonds, but it's way low, below the threshold. Now, the threshold, to my knowledge, is set by the state and by financial rating agencies for very good reasons. It maintains the financial integrity of this county government so it does not go bankrupt. It's for people who've ever been associated with a community that has a bankrupt government, it's not a happy place. So staying away from that is good. Now, that's just general. More specific, increasing bonding dramatically in any given supervisor's term effectively ties the hands of the supervisors who get elected for future terms. And so it's a trade-off. Is there some advantage to having that infrastructure now? Are we better off because the Sondheim Center is here now rather than having to put it off 10 years into the future? There's definitely pros and cons. I apologize because I've forgotten the question, but
You're doing good.
okay, yeah,
I can repeat it if you
that would
want.
be great.
Is time up? Is it appropriate to fund an infrastructure project utilizing bonding instead of a pay-as-you-go approach?
It's usually appropriate for capital projects like the Sondheim Center, for example, that are going to have an immediate lasting impact on the community as compared to things that could be taken care of by general revenue.
Thank you. The next question will be Dick, right? I lost my notes here, so. Would you be opposed or against creating a pilot area of the county where property taxes would be lowered from the current state maximum to the state minimum? This would be funded by reducing the gravel road budget with priority going to school bus routes. Farmers would have increased funds to maintain roads themselves. Projected profits will go up, water quality improvement, industrialization could go down, overhead lowered, less petroleum use, better for grazing livestock, economy, and other options.
That's a question?
That's what I got on the paper.
Okay.
Take it for what it's worth.
Would I be opposed to it? A pilot section? I don't know. I assume this individual is probably going to donate his plot of land or something for the pilot section. I'm assuming maybe that's probably what's going to happen. I don't know if he'd come up and put it on the agenda, talk to the supervisors about it, and had a little plot and wanted to try something. Why not? How can you say no on without trying? It sounds kind of innovative. It was a mouthful. I know it was. But my time up? Oh. Well, so my wife says, don't talk all the time. Okay, my time's up. Sorry, dear.
Matthew?
I'm not sure the underlying aspiration or goal or what possibly could happen better or different by doing this. I know that years ago, before there was enough people and enough money to have a dedicated professional road crew that many farmers would contract with the county to take care of the section of road that was near their farm. So it's certainly a time-tested way of doing things. However, now we have modern equipment, all sorts of things. From a libertarian standpoint, having opportunities for experiment, it sounds good. It just has to be tested. So if it's a pilot project, if it's based on voluntary consent, another important libertarian principle, voluntary consent, where only the affected property owners are undertaking this and willingly rather than any other type of experiment. So pilot project, sure. How much time it would take for a county engineer to figure out all the regulations and such, maybe sometime. It's different from the last 50, 100 years, but it's still possible.
Thank you. Darren?
It sounds like a really nice program. But as with all programs, you have to have voluntary participation. And with this type of program, you would have to have some way of benchmarking what is going on out there. As far as a property owner being made to be responsible for the roadway in front of their property, in a way you are right now. That expense is shared out over many other property owners in your area so that it can be maintained and taken care of. You're thinking in terms of maybe a homeowners type association where a group of people band together and they take care of the roadway going back to their homes, and they pay as you go on what needs to be done. Now, just the other day, I was out and looked at a project that a homeowners association that's going to need to undertake in order to improve a water line that's exposed. Well, there's a cost for them to do that, and they're going to rely on the association and all the owners in order to be able to take care of this problem. As far as reducing the tax in that area so that they can do that and they could have more money in order to be able to do that on their own, I would have to look at what state law says about creating a zone like that. So until I've got a chance to actually study what the problem is and how to work it,
Thank you.
that's all I can say.
Next question will be Matthew first. Do you support local control or local siting authority for livestock facilities?
Oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah, I know many of you are passionate, and I wish this was the time and the place for audience participation. However, there are times, and there have been times, and there will continue to be times where not just the people in this room, but people in all the cities of Jefferson County, in Fairfield, in the farming community, can have a chance to weigh in on whether local control would benefit them. And ultimately, there is the question of whether it's appropriate to second guess these county supervisors and whether it's appropriate to second guess the state government. Those are ultimate questions, and they're also irrelevant because we are the people, we are in this state of Iowa. Ultimately, we make the rules. Right now, they're a certain way. All of you have been concerned about water quality, concerned about your ability to continue farming, wanting your community to prosper and thrive. Usually local control helps that. It's just, what are the details? Are we being locked into something where everyone's unhappy so we can work together in better ways?
Darren?
Local control over siting animal confinements or animal operations. It is a huge subject right at this point in time, not only here, but in other places across Iowa, North Carolina, even in countries like Spain. They have problem with not being able to control how siting is done for animal operations. Locally here, I do believe that we have a little bit more that we can do on our own as a county, but ultimately what happens with this is going to have to go through the State House. And that's why it's important to be able to have people that can work with our legislators, work with other counties that have these very similar same problems, and figure out how they have worked through them in order to benefit more of our local people here. There is a big difference between someone that's a local farmer that has an operation and has expanded it over time. He lives here in the community, he works here in the community, he employs people here in the community. And the farmer that buys property from somewhere else and wants to bring his operation here and only have just a few people work for him and not really add as much to the community as what someone locally would. So I think that we need to look at this in the larger picture on the state level to try to help us here in the county have more control locally.
Thank you. Dick?
Local control on animal confinements here in Jefferson County. That sounds pretty good. But it isn't all about Jefferson County because there's a county line. And you can put animal confinement in Washington County just right on the county line. And if you had local control in Jefferson County, it wouldn't stop anything. It wouldn't stop the water, it wouldn't stop the smell, and vice versa. That's the reason it's controlled by the state, because local control doesn't govern certain things. We pretty much have local control now, but except for what is mandated by the state. So I hear it every now and again about local control, and I sit back and I think, man, that's the answer. But it doesn't seem to really work. I know there are some states, I think 4 years ago we talked about it, and I believe somebody said in New Mexico there was a local control in some county that was working pretty good.
Thank you, Dick.
Yeah.
And tonight, the final question of the night is going to be, what do you each offer for benefit of the people of Jefferson County? And we'll start with Darren.
I bring my experience with working with the road system with me to the Office of County Supervisor. I also know that I bring experience from working through water quality issues from the time that I helped and worked with eliminating sanitary sewer overflows here in Fairfield and the waste that goes from us onto our neighbors to the south through Crow Creek. I have worked through those kind of problems. I can be a solution finder. I can listen to what goes on. I can work with people that have ideas of what solutions may be, and I can work through on how to make those things happen. I bring years of experience from City Council. I also bring years of experience through my work with engineering firms. I also bring years of experience of family members who are farmers and know what they go through on a daily basis with their operations as well. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dick?
Read that question one more time, please.
What do you each offer for the benefit of all the people of Jefferson County?
I think, I don't know every one of you. I've always said I should. If you're a taxpayer in Jefferson County, I should know you. If I don't, I'd love to take and sit down and visit with you. I think personally being able to deal with you is a big thing, because if you deal with somebody, you want to take good care of them. I actually care about every one of you on everything I do. I have the experience. Now, it's kind of like I can't make every one of you happy all the time, unfortunately. That just doesn't work. But the bottom line is, I can do a good job for you. I just can't make you happy all the time, period.
Thank you, Dick. Matthew?
Yes, I bring the willingness to watch Iowa turn into a kinder, gentler, more prosperous, and maybe just plain happy place to be, which it is. There's not too much I can do to add to it. Instead, there's a lot all of you can do to add to it. So what I bring is one thing for sure. If you vote for me, you will be glad you did.
Thank you. At this time, we would like to ask the audience for 2 minutes of silence so the candidates can prepare their closing statements. Following the 2 minutes, each candidate will have 3 minutes for their closing remarks. Thank you. At this time, we will begin closing remarks with Dick.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody in the audience that took the time out to come listen to us. It's an important position to be Jefferson County Supervisor. And so I do not take it lightly. I take it very seriously, although I chuckle and laugh every now and again a little bit. But as I look out here in the crowd, I feel like that maybe I've answered a couple of questions kind of on the defense side from what's been going on the last couple of weeks, maybe almost a month. You know what? It was in the Tumwa Courier that I said, if you don't like what I do, vote my ass out. And that's not like Dick Reed to say something like that. You know, I have a home inspection business. And I very seldom ever do 2 of those a day because I care so much about what I do. I want to make sure I require the buyer to be with me. And I care about what I tell you and what I do. And I truly care about every single step I do in Jefferson County. It comes from my gut, my heart. I was raised that way. And so when I get pushed up against the wall, and it's a meeting where we made a rule that you can't say anything, we can only listen, it piles up. And so some way, you kind of have to let it out. Well, okay, I just let it out. But the bottom line is, I think everybody in the county ought to vote. Now, vote for who you want to. If you don't vote for me, that's fine. I'd like for you to vote for me. But when I build homes, I would not call you to build your house. You would call me. I'd never wanted to work for somebody that didn't want me to work for them. And I still feel like that today. So it's the citizens of Jefferson County that need to get out and vote and says who runs this county. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Matthew?
Yes. I am representing the freedom of choice. Most elections so far have had 2 candidates for 1 seat. I have stepped up to the table here with all of you so that now there is an opportunity to have 3 candidates to choose from. Choice represents, as Supervisor Reed was mentioning, the ability to go for completely what you want. And one of the motivations that brought me here in this campaign is my desire to see local politics in our county to be harmonious, to be active, to involve participation of anyone and everyone who has any interest or willingness in seeing how the decisions affecting them are made and what they can say. And the education part is a little tricky. And so I think my coming in the race will make it easier for people to see that it's not just how can I'm not even thinking of what the current state of affairs was or has been. I just know that with diversity, with choice, with options, usually the best thing happens. As for me, I love this community. I have been here more than half my life. I have watched people put together their dreams and fashion them into solid things. I have seen farmers who sent their kids off into the world and watched their kids come back. It's just really exciting, this part of Iowa. I consider Iowa to be the heart of the United States, and as much as Jefferson County can represent that, I am here with you.
Thank you. Darren?
I would like to say thank you to the Farm Bureau for having this forum for us tonight to be able to address people here in Fairfield, either over the radio or the people that have taken the time to come and be in the audience here tonight with us, to get our views, to understand who we are, and to see who you would like to see in your next county supervisor. I believe that I've shown over the years that I can handle this job. I've worked hard in what I've done with the city council. I've been through adversity with radio read water meters, with cell towers here in town, with sanitary sewer overflows, with infrastructure falling apart around our ears, and we've all seen that improve over the years that many of us have worked on the city council in order to accomplish. I feel that I can bring that same type of dedication and work ethic to the county supervisor's position. I appreciate that all citizens of Jefferson County have a voice and need to be heard when it comes to their way of life, their quality of life, and how Iowa has been structured from the past and into the future. My vision for the county is that I hope that we can work through some of these problems that we're having with larger CAFO operations. I think that there are solutions out there that are within our reach if we put ourselves to it, our minds to it, and dedicate our work action towards it. I think that we've had a good board in the past. We've had great boards previous to that. I think that I can add my expertise to the current members of the board, and that we can move forward in helping to make Jefferson County a better place to work, live, and grow. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the Jefferson County Farm Bureau Meet the Candidates Forum. Would you please join me in a round of applause for the candidates for participating? John?
Just a couple quick things. I'd like to also congratulate the crowd on some great questions. We do appreciate it. We knew it was almost time to wrap up when we got who would win a race, the Roadrunner or Sonic the Hedgehog. So we do appreciate it. And would you also join me in thanking Tracy Deal, our timekeeper, and Joe Ledger, our moderator.
Thank you. And remember to vote on November the 6th.